whatever. So, okay, I direct the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, but really I have some. Well, my roots are strongly in Northeast Ohio, and a lot of my roots take place in Akron. I was born in Sandusky, and then my father got a job which took him to New Jersey for a while, and then he was in the rubber industry, so he was promoted to Akron, Ohio in 1966. He used to work in a building called the Goodyear Bank Building on the corner of Ridgewood and Market Street. I think that's what it was. So he was in the rubber industry, and so that was all really good living for our family. Really appreciate that. Then I went through high school, and my junior year of high school, somebody said, "Oh, you really need to go up to the University of Akron to hear this concert." And it was Roland Palucci directing the jazz ensembles with Phil Woods at E.J. Thomas Hall. Okay, and so the band is out there, and then Roland came out with his glasses and his ponytail and all that. And, I thought, this guy's really something. It was really great. And then I ended up going to the University of Akron, largely due to the influence of Roland. And Roland's influence on a whole generation of Northeast Ohio jazz musicians could hardly be overestimated. And then from Roland, an introduction came to Pat Pace. So how many of you knew Pat Pace a little bit? Oh, this is great. Okay. So I'm a trombonist, but I play enough piano to fool people, is what I say. But I do a lot of composing and arranging with the piano. So I'm studying composition with Pat Pace, and Pat was a great composer. He actually wrote a concertino for piano and orchestra that's played by the Cleveland Orchestra, and also played at Akron. While I was studying with him, he wrote a ballet, and Pat just knew so much about everything. It was just lessons at his house on Jefferson Street, I think it was, or Avondale Street.
Jefferson.
Yeah, right. Just wonderful. So anyway, I was kind of a budding composer back in those days, and I'm trying to squeeze everything I know into every piece, you know. So I'd play something for Pat, and Pat would say, "Oh, keep working on that." So one day, a friend of mine was sort of standing, a friend of mine who had the next lesson, came and was sitting nearby watching my lesson. So I finished up my lesson and paid Pat and walked out, and my friend walks in, sits down at the piano, and they're just getting started. And my friend says, "Paul, he's really using a lot of chords, isn't he?" And Pat says, "Yeah, he'll get over it." So I persisted, though. But anyway, my time at Akron University, graduated in 1983, and just great people. Roland Palucci, Pat Pace, and also Richard Shirey was there teaching music theory. Richard accompanied me on a variety of solos that I played, and he was just the epitome of competence and good taste. And I told him I regret I didn't have music theory with him, because it just would have been a really good experience. So then came another association at Akron University was meeting Jack Shantz, who still does the jazz program there. And Jack had almost, I hate to take this too far, but a very close relationship with Roland, almost father-son, close to that sort of thing. And then Jack has also been a mentor to me. He's 6 years older. And it was thanks to the connections with Jack Shantz that I was able to travel with the Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey bands for basically off and on between 1984 and 88. And just the experience of every night playing and pick up the trombone and going, "Bap, bap, bap, do, bap, pow." Every night. It's a shaping experience. It really is. Then in the middle of that came Eastman School of Music, and that's another Akron connection, because one of the main reasons I wanted to go to Eastman was because of a man who taught there whose name is Bill Dobbins. A lot of you might have heard of Bill, at least. Bill graduated from Buckle High School, I think, in 1964, and then went to the Kent State University, and between bachelor's degree and master's degree and just staying around, He was in town until about 1973. They began teaching at Eastman. He's still teaching there now. So it's 45 years. It's really something. So a lot of Akron connections here. My father in 1968 or so brought home a record. Again, my father was in the rubber industry, which meant, a couple, 2 or 3 martini lunches at the Tangier, and he would hear the Phil Palumbo and Pals play. Anybody have that record they made, Phil Palumbo and Pals? Got all the little photographs on there, Mickey Aratano, and I forget the singer's name, Eddie Palucci. Okay. Yeah. Oh, how many were you at? I know you had the concert for Roland Palucci, DJ Thomas, about a month ago. No. A wonderful concert for this fund.
March 16th.
Okay, so about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So a wonderful occasion. So just a little quick Eddie Palucci story. One of our friends, Dave Morgan, had arranged the song Watermelon Man, which is like this funky song. Wow, that's a great song by Herbie Hancock, right? So Dave Morgan, good friend of mine, Dave Morgan is, asked me to play a trombone solo on it. Sure, Dave, but it's in 7/4 time. I'm trying. He messes with it. He changes the time. So I'm playing all this stuff that I know. I mean, jazz musicians, you think you just make it up, right? Well, in a way you make it up, but am I making up this speech? In a way. In a way, but I've told these stories about 5,000 times, okay? So I'm just rearranging stories. That's how jazz musicians improvise. They just sort of rearrange phrases that they're sort of comfortable with. So I'm playing all this stuff I'm comfortable with, but it's in 7/4 time. So I keep landing. Oh gosh. Dave Morgan and I remain friends. Which leads me up then to 1992, and again, Roland Palucci figures in this. The Akron Symphony wanted to have a benefit, and so they wanted to combine the Akron Symphony with the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. So Roland made all of the technical, we'll call them the technical arrangements, like, okay, we'll bring in the band, and they decided to hire Dolores Parker Morgan. Oh, yeah. Remember Dolores? Yeah. And so we're very fortunate to have Dolores' daughter here tonight. This is one, I just met Melody an hour ago. So, and I was just telling Melody that I've done hundreds of arrangements for people now. It just keeps adding up. I'm 57 and it just adds up. So, and some vocalists will tell you, oh, arrange Misty for me. Do whatever you want. I said, well, okay. But then with Dolores, though, those of you that know her, this might resonate. She was extremely particular. She says, okay, we're going to start the Ellington medley with Love You Madly, at this tempo, in the key of C. All right. And then we're going to transition into Prelude to a Kiss, and then we'll go right into Don't Get Around Much Anymore. And then another transition, I'm going to sing Mood Indigo, but I want it to go like this. And to me, I have plenty of other times when I'm totally free, but once in a while it's nice to have a template. You can just relax within the template. Did you ever template? Well, Mrs. Budd, her husband, Leonard, was the minister at Church of the Savior. Did you ever have a template for a sermon once in a while?
I don't think so.
Oh, well. This is what I asked. Yes, okay. So, anyway, we did. So this Duke Ellington medley that I arranged for Dolores is now going to be performed for the first time in 26 years, and we'll have Evelyn Wright singing it, and at least 2 other arrangements that I did for Dolores that night were "The Song Is You" and "Got the World on a String." Okay, so we're honoring Duke Ellington. We're also, in a way, honoring Roland Palucci. Any skills I have that I may have absorbed through osmosis from Pat Pace or through osmosis from the desire to have had Richard Shirey as a music theory teacher, that might show up too. So it's all going to be present there. And then a couple of my originals. We're doing a Duke Ellington medley and a Glenn Miller medley. But if we just do nothing but old songs, that's okay. So we threw a couple new things. I wrote a piece called Rays of Light. I like to honor my mentors when we can. And so one mentor was Rayburn Wright, an arranging teacher at Eastman, Bill Dobbins' colleague, and a great bass trombone player, Ray Premrose. So this will feature Theron Brown on piano. Are you familiar with Theron? Theron is a marvel. He's just a marvel. So that's a piano feature for him. And another piece I wrote called Astieri, named after a restaurant I ate at in Paris. And that'll feature Howie Smith on the saxophone, and Howie's completely astonishing Cleveland jazz musician. And then a variety of other things. So some new stuff, some old stuff, and hopefully a really great evening. I'm very honored that well, this isn't switching topics, but I'm honored that everybody in this room is one of the four legs of a stool that makes a program like this possible. And for an orchestra concert to happen, you need the orchestra. You also need management. And you also need an audience. And then you need support. And this is part of the support. Just about everybody in this room donates and helps, donates their time, donates their money. And without this fourth leg, the chair, try it sometime. Take out a leg and see what happens. It's just, you can hang in there for a second, but not too long. Okay? So I'm honored that all of you are part of the process of making this concert work. And hopefully we'll put on a good show next week. So maybe right now it'd just be good to have some time for some questions. So, delight. I have some other jokes.
Really good. I can tell you, you know, for years when Palumbo was up at the red carpet there in the falls, we would go there and everybody was smoking. It was just a hazy smoke. Remember then he had heart problems because Palumbo did because of all the basically the smoking of it, but that was fabulous.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Watermelon Man and something about the dog and little boy. I don't know, we knew them all.
Well, that was a special time. I mean, it's interesting. Every generation has its vices. And back in my father's time, it was smoke-filled restaurants and martinis. And today, it's something else.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yes.
So, yes.
Is there any trombone player that has influenced your style, or a favorite teacher, or
Well, a good friend of Roland's was Chaz Baker. Chaz taught at Kent State for many years. And Chaz is a contemporary and a colleague of Bill Dobbins as well. So all these connections, really, they add up, they bounce off of each other. And so Chaz was my first trombone teacher. And then Chaz suggested, actually Chaz and Roland said, you should study with Ed Zadrozny at Akron U. And Ed is almost exactly 8 years older than I am. Ed played for many years in the Akron Symphony. And he's just quite frankly, he hasn't played for a couple of years very much, but he's just quite simply one of the finest trombone players in the country. So, when we think about Northeast Ohio, it's interesting to me. I have a lot of friends in Columbus, and my friends in Columbus, I get the feeling once in a while that they look at Cleveland as kind of like this distant land where all the interesting stuff is happening. I think every city has a little bit of an inferiority complex, okay? And it doesn't need to be that way because almost every city has just enough people to make a huge difference in your life musically. So for me, it was people like Roland Palucci and Ed Zadrozny and Pat Pace, and really, you can only get so much from so many people. And those three people, my goodness, that was an embarrassment of riches. So anyway, Chaz Baker was an influence, and as far as jazz trombone players, people like J.J. Johnson, and I would just spend hours writing down his solos. I'd listen to the record. I just tore up these records, putting the needle down and writing down 3 or 4 notes and trying to crack the code. And that's what a lot of music is just trying to crack the code. Like, why did you choose this note? How come this note sounds so good? So that's a little bit of that story. So,
I just want to say one thing. A couple of years ago, I said to Christopher Wilkins, we have this wonderful program of gospel meets symphony every year, and we've just had our 25th anniversary of that. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we could come up with jazz meets symphony?
Mhm.
And he said, Jerry, I'm working on that.
Yeah.
And so here we are, it's coming to Akron, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy that we're having that and you're part of it.
Chris and I had lunch together a little over a year ago or so. We just started planning this. Now, the origins of this idea, who knows the exact date, but it might go at least as far back as 1924. What famous piece was premiered in 1924 that was said to make a lady out of jazz? You know? Huh? Rhapsody in Blue. Yeah, that's
I
right.
was gonna ask,
Yeah.
how did Gershwin
Yeah.
make that transition into being considered a classical composer when he really started out with jazz, and why haven't other jazz composers made that same jump?
Well, it's
You're not
it's
interested.
it's not I'm not really sure that Gershwin started off in jazz. He had a big open mind. And Richard, if you have anything you want to add to this, Gershwin sometimes has a reputation of kind of being a playboy and just doing whatever. But he was a student. He was a scholar. So he didn't really operate with a jazz combo or something like that. Now Harold Arlen, a little bit younger, did. Arlen was a member of the band. He could sit down and play jazz at the piano and sing jazz. But Gershwin just had huge ears. Whatever he heard, he could use. So yeah, he grows up in Manhattan. He's got some of the Jewish thing happening. He's got some of the popular song thing happening. He's got some of the jazz happening, and also some of the classical thing happening. That's one reason why his music is so unique. And then he goes to Europe, and who's he seeking out when he's in Europe? He's trying to hang out with Maurice Ravel. He does hang out with Alban Berg. Now Berg is like, that's extra deep. I mean, Ravel's deep, but Berg is like, ooh, this is. Do you understand Berg yet, Richard?
Yeah, violin concerto.
It's a tough one. Now that's got the tone row that actually is like a G minor chord with a major seventh on it. It's kind of constant. But you taught me that, I think. Paul, this is how it goes. So anyway, but he was always trying to learn. And recently I was reading about how Berg was influenced on certain sections of Porgy and Bess. So to compare Gershwin of Porgy and Bess with Rhapsody in Blue is just to see tremendous growth. And that's kind of straying off topic a little bit. But so the idea of combining jazz and classical music is an interesting one. I'm not one for contrivance. Sometimes it's just good to write a piece of good. It's better to write a piece of music, and if it happens to show all those influences, it's a little bit better after the fact. So, but it's nice. It's nice to try. So. All right. Anyone else? Ask me about baseball if you want. I'm a big golf fan too.
It's opening day.
Yeah,
Cleveland.
that's
Oh, it's
right.
opening day?
Yeah, tonight, 4:30.
What?
For the snow.
So, this is like the 26th anniversary of the first time
Uh-huh.
that the Akron Symphony and the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra collaborated.
Right.
Because the first time was in February of 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, long time
I was
ago.
with Alan Balter,
Yes.
Oh, I remember.
and that was a lot of fun. That was at the Akron Civic Theater. So this time we're in EJ, is that correct? Yes. Yeah. I show up the wrong place. But even that, EJ Thomas was the first concert at EJ Virgil Fox or something like that, or one of the first.
Early on.
Early on, yeah, because my mom was a Virgil Fox fan. He was a sort of all things, a pop classical organist.
Yeah.
He played Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor and kind of make a show of it. And well, we could use somebody like that today. Probably couldn't think so. I think so. Okay. Well, anyone else? That not enough there. So.
How did you get into the actual part of rearranging music for different styles instead of just playing what's on the sheet in front of you?
Oh, different styles. Well, part of it's just whatever you hear. And I was so lucky. Actually, 4 years ago, I was in Chicago, and I went there to see a complete performance of Porgy and Bess. I'd never heard the complete opera live. And I'm listening to it, and I'm starting to cry a little bit, or my ears just sort of tearing up a little bit. And the reason wasn't because of what was happening on stage, because I knew the opera very well, partially because it used to be on TV a lot, or the movie with Sammy Davis and Sidney Poitier that used to be on Sunday afternoon movie, back in the 70s. But I just started tearing up because I just thought, I grew up in Stark County. I grew up in Perry Township, which is a connecting township between Massillon and Canton, right on US 30. And I just thought, my goodness, I know this opera. I can sing along with this 2.5-hour opera. And it's because we are probably one of the only families in Stark County, or probably certainly in Perry Heights, to have the complete opera constantly playing on our record player. And that sort of stuff gets in your head, okay? And then my mom would make us listen to Brahms 4 before we went to bed because she wanted to take us to see George Zell conducted a Blossom in July of 1969. Were any of you there at that? Yeah, George Zell. He only conducted a Blossom twice. Once in 68 and once in 69. And
He died in
May of 70, yeah. So my mom wanted to make sure we learned Brahms 4 because she wanted to go see George Zell conduct. So I'm growing up memorizing Brahms 4, Porgy and Bess, Ellington at Newport, Oklahoma, The King and I. So Count Sammy Davis with Buddy Rich, Sammy Davis with Count Basie. Now that's about 7 or 8 records that just got in really deep by the time I was 12 years old. Oh, Golden Boy with Sammy Davis, probably the jazziest musical ever. Charles Strauss, talking about styles. Charles Strauss studied classical composition, and then he writes Bye Bye Birdie, Golden Boy, and Annie. 3 completely different styles of musicals, but then he can write a string quartet if you want. So to me, all this different type of music, it's just like, well, they're different, but there's enough common denominators that you can do it. So if someone wants something kind of classical, I can do that. I prefer the blues, but you do what you have to do, and you got to be flexible. So
Paul, how do you how does one put a concert together that it is jazz meets symphony? I mean, it seems like an oxymoron. I mean, like it's 2 different whole ways of approaching.
Well, so she's asking, how do you put a program like this together? Now, how many of you are going to come to the open rehearsal? Okay, that's good. I warn you that you might be excited to come to an open rehearsal, but making music is a bit like they say, making sausage or making laws. You don't necessarily want to know too much about what goes into the making of art. And so when you're preparing music, there's a lot of stopping and starting and misunderstandings and you sure it should go this fast, so can you try a little slower? What's my note of letter B? Oh no, okay, so now what goes into the program? Okay, well, this might be privileged information. So I have lunch with Christopher about a year ago. And then I decide Christopher's very busy, very talented guy, constantly traveling, constantly conducting, okay? I thought, I'm going to submit a draft program and see what he says. So I just made out the whole program of stuff that I knew was available, stuff that I've done or whatever. And I sent it to him an email. He said, looks great, let's do it. So,
Here we go.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I just saw he's busy. He's busy, And but he did suggest one piece, the piece by Bill Russo called 3 Movements for Jazz Band and something or other, I forget. But so I just thought, I'll just take something off his plate and he'll look at it if he's any objections. So that's fine. So that's how it came together. Yes, Robert.
Have you ever heard the name of Mark Scatterday?
Oh, Mark Scatterday. Yeah, how many of you know the Scatterday family? This is great. I mean, that's another beautiful thing. I think about Mark every time we drive. I drive north or on Route 77 because you drive past Good Park Golf Course. The Scatterdays used to live right next to the course. So Mark and I had a duel to the death back in 1981 or something like that. I shot at 82 and he shot at 81 and he's never let me forget it. So, number 10 is that great par 4. It's a tough hole, right? I didn't play there for 37 years. I just remember number 10 is a tough hole. But anyway, that's another thing. The people you meet. Boy, I mean, there we were at Akron University, 1979 through 83. Mark's 2 years older than I am. But now Mark is conducting the wind ensemble at Eastman. That's like pretty serious stuff. And other people who I knew there at the time are also doing quite well. Some people are out of music, sure, everyone does different things.
Mark conducts all over the world now.
He does great, yeah. So it's a very prestigious position, and we're still friends. And,
He used to play a trombone once.
he was we both studied trombone with Edward Zadrozny. So and I'll tell a quick Mark Scatterday story. Maybe you guys get a kick out of this. So the trombone teacher, Edward Zadrozny, such a great player, he had studied for many years with a member of the Cleveland Orchestra, Alan Kofsky. So he decided to bring in Kofsky for a master class. So Ed thought, well, okay, I'm going to have each of my trombone players prepare an orchestral excerpt that is like a famous orchestral passage, like the trombone solo from Bolero or the chorale from Brahms' Warner. So Mark Scatterday's job was to perform the big trombone section of the March to the Scaffold from Hector Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique. So this involves the trombones going up to a really high note to convey the terror of marching to the scaffold and beating your fate. So all week long we heard Mark going boom, beep, beep, boom, 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 beep, 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 beep. And we heard in the practice rooms down at the basement of Gazetta Hall and these little refrigerator practice rooms they have there. And so you just heard him practicing this piece over and over. And he had about an 85% success rate hitting the high note, okay, which isn't bad. So the big moment comes, he's got to play it now for a trombonist from the Cleveland Orchestra. So Mark is up there to play, and boom, beep, 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 beep. Okay, now that can happen to anybody, but what was great was Alan Kofsky's response. Kofsky's listening like this, and Mark gets done playing, kind of puts out his horn, kind of goes, and Kofsky says, "Oh, you're the first person I ever heard miss that note." So that was, no, I mean, that's to really put it in context. What he meant is an ironic way of saying everybody misses that note. So, anyway, Mark Scatterday, great guy. And yeah, just really, again, to hang out with Mark, to hang out with Roland, Pat Pace, Jack Shantz, Mark Lopin, Dave Banks. These were great people. And still, just lucky a lot of them have chosen to remain in the area. So you'll get to hear, well, I get to write music for my friends. Jack Shantz is going to play La Vie en Rose. Okay, it's a nice song. And Louis Armstrong played that and sang it too. And so Jack will play it. And Howie Smith will play it. Theron Brown. These are all my friends. I get to write music for my friends. I feel like Tennessee Ernie Williams writing a play, then Marlon Brando's about to star in it. You know what I mean? It's really like that. You're hearing people's voices, and you get to write for their voices. And that's a great privilege, whether you're writing a play or an arrangement. So it was a pleasure to write for D. Morgan. So it's really good stuff.
Do you play in the Dave Banks Big Band?
Once in a while, yeah. So
For
that's
them at Blue Jazz.
Yeah, that's mostly his friends from Akron, but I sub there once in a while and all that. So Dave and I are good buddies. And like the Banks family, David's father was chairman of the board of trust. No, he was director of development at the University of Akron. So I mean, it took people like that to sort of transition the music department from a really small thing across the street from Jack Horner's. I miss that place. Into Gazetta Hall, connected to EJ. That's really serious stuff. That was 1976 or so, I think.
76.
Yeah. So, good
So
stuff.
Paul,
Yeah.
all of these people that you've been mentioning that I know,
Yeah.
Mark Scatterday, Dave Banks, Jack Shantz, Mark Lopez, you, and others, all were part of that jazz ensemble that Roland took to Montreux.
That's right. Yeah, that's 1980. A mere 38 years ago now. So, yeah, Roland, he made good things happen. It's a thing.
Yeah.
So just hung around Roland often enough, and before long you'd be playing behind Frank Gorshin at the Tangier restaurant, the Sultan's Cabaret, watching him do the Riddler or imitating Jack Nicholson or Kirk Douglas or whatever. And Roland was just not only a great musician with impeccable taste, but just a genuine catalyst. And you need catalysts. So all of you in this room really are catalysts, helping to make musical programs happen. So that's.
Roland also did nice wedding music.
I bet. Would you play it up here for weddings?
He played at our wedding.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, just great taste and great ears.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a wrong note someplace, he just had a way of picking it out right off the bat. And he's a fine performer on the piano. He played the bass back in the day. One time he picked up the trombone. I was like, gosh, that's pretty good. So, a great guy. So, still his loss is very much felt. So. Well, we'll see you all a week from tonight, right? So I'll go smoothly.